Welcome back, students. I know you've all been waiting for this. This is our lecture on commas and comma rules. I know it might not sound too exciting. However, it's very, very important for any kind of business writing or medical writing to be able to know your rules of punctuation. Whether you're a medical transcriptionist, a medical administrative specialist, or a medical receptionist, you need to know how to properly use your commas. So this lecture will tell you a little bit more about the rules of commas and hopefully will help clarify some of the information that's in our textbook. While commas are used frequently in our English writing and medical writing, it is oftentimes the punctuation that we have most trouble understanding and knowing when we really should have a comma there and when we shouldn't. So let's learn some good rules so that you understand it and feel more confident in your writing skills. There is an interactive quiz that I have posted out on our Blackboard site under the web links area. It's called Interactive Comma Quiz. You can either stop this lecture now and go there and test your skills on commas if you'd like, or you can simply just jot it down now, jot yourself a note and go back to it after you've gone through this presentation. But it's kind of fun to go through this comma quiz and test yourself and see if you know the rules up front or not. See where the problems are, and it will help you when you get started learning comma rules here in our techniques class. In our first lecture this week, we talked about non-essential information, words, phrases, clauses that really don't contribute to the meaning of the sentence. We would understand the information even if we didn't have this information. It's non-essential. But let's look at a couple of these here. Dr. Kelly, comma, who is a member of the AMA, comma, spoke to the Wisconsin-Minnesota Association. Who is a member of the AMA is a non-essential clause. We don't need to know that. It's nice to know, but we don't have to know that in order for the sentence to make sense. We could take that information out. Dr. Kelly spoke to the Wisconsin-Minnesota Association. Still makes sense without it. It's called a non-essential clause, but notice we set it off with commas. There's a comma before who and after AMA. Our next example here, use of Paxil should, by all means, be discontinued. This is a parenthetical expression. Again, remember, a parenthetical expression is just extra words. It doesn't even really give us any additional information like the first example here. Use of Paxil should be discontinued could certainly stand alone. We don't even need those three words, by all means. It's called a parenthetical expression. It is our English language, and we use those words, so we just need to know that when we have a parenthetical expression, we set it off by commas. So in this case, because the parenthetical expression is in the middle of the sentence, there's a comma before by and after means. We could switch the sentence around to say, by all means, comma, use of Paxil should be discontinued. We just place that parenthetical expression in the front and note that then we would have just one comma after means. Now let's talk about using commas to set off non-essential appositives. What's an appositive? Do you remember? Just restates or clarifies the noun that precedes it. So, UW Hospital, comma, Madison's largest healthcare facility, comma, was built in 1970. Madison's largest healthcare facility is a non-essential appositive. It restates who UW Hospital is, or clarifies, gives us extra information, but it's not essential to the meaning of that sentence. We could say UW Hospital was built in 1970, and it makes sense. Nice to know, but we don't have to know. Non-essential appositives are set off with commas. Let's look at the next one here. The tool, a male scissors, cost $100. Now this appositive, a male scissors, if you'll notice it's in italics, is essential to this sentence. Otherwise it would say the tool costs $100, and we would be left with the question, which tool? So in this case, no commas. It's essential. So only non-essential appositives are set off with commas. For short parenthetical expressions, we're going to set them off with commas. Furthermore, comma, the discharge report specified a home care treatment plan. The treatment plan, comma, on the other hand, comma, was costly. Following the treatment plan is important, comma, however. So in these cases, these are all parenthetical expressions, just extra words, don't provide us any information, set them off with commas. And this slide just shows a list of some of the more common parenthetical expressions that we might see. And I'll let you read those on your own. Important to remember again that no matter where they fall in the sentence, we're going to set them off with commas. Our next comma rule says to set off an introductory phrase or clause with a comma. After you take the capsule, comma, you may not eat for 2 hours. To prepare for a sigmoidoscopy and to achieve maximum results, comma, colon exams are preceded by an enema regimen. So again, when we have introductory phrase or clause, we're going to set it off with a comma. Our next rule says that commas are used to set off the name of a state when preceded by the city. My residency was done at the General Hospital in Boston, comma, Massachusetts, comma, in 1999. In an address situation, look at what happens to our state there. My address is 132 Main Street, comma, Cambridge, comma, WI, or two-letter state abbreviation, 52562. Note that we do not use a comma after a two-letter state abbreviation. We're going to use commas to set off titles and degrees following a name, such as Kathy Spahn, comma, Business Technology Instructor, comma, coordinated the advisory committee meeting. Title, Business Technology Instructor, belongs to Kathy Spahn. We're going to set it off with commas. Jane Smith, comma, MD, comma, specializes in family practice medicine. MD is Jane Smith's title. We're going to set it off with commas. Also note that we no longer use periods between titles. We'll get into that down the road, but just thought I'd point that out. Troy Johnson, comma, MD, comma, PhD, comma, submitted an article for publication. So here we have two titles, comma between both. We use commas to separate elements in a series, such as my current medications are Synvix, comma, Coreg, comma, and Aldontinate, Fosamax, period. So here we have 3 medications, commas between each one to show where one ends and one begins. And note that we do use that comma before that conjunction and in a series. That's what our AHDI Book of Style says is the preferred in our medical writing, to use that and when we're talking about a series. The colors of our nation's flag are red, comma, white, comma, and blue. If you wanted to look that up in your AHDI Book of Style, how do you think you would do it? Take a look at your book, go to the index in the back, take a look at commas, and find which entry would most likely show this rule. And you can go to that page and read more about it. Series, commas, and separating elements in a series. We have a few other miscellaneous comma uses shown here in this example of this slide. The first one here, her last appointment was on May 5th, comma, 2000 XX, whatever the year is, comma, the day before she died. Because we have the month, day, and year in the middle of the sentence, we're going to set it off with commas as shown here. So May 5th, comma, 2000, comma, the day before she died. We need all 3 elements, and then we're going to use commas. Let's take a look at number 2. Please make another appointment for October 2000 XX. No comma here. Why? Why don't we have a comma? Well, we only have two elements. Remember we said we needed the month, day, and year. So we're missing the date in this one. So please make an appointment for October 2000 XX. No comma. If we said, please make another appointment for October 5th, comma, 2000 XX, then we would have that comma after the date. So see the difference here? We don't have the specific day. So not all three elements, no commas. Let's look at the next one. I'll see you on December 13 at the office party. No commas. Why? Well, we don't have the year. If we had a specific year put here after the 13th, then we would have a comma. Then it would say, I'll see you on October 13, comma, 2000 XX, comma, at the office party. So see the difference? Here we only have month, day, so no comma. And the last example here, 3 doctors performed a practice known as Smith, comma, Smith, ampersand sign, Smith, Inc. Notice that we do not use a comma before the ampersand sign, nor before the INC, the Inc. Same thing goes with LTD. We no longer use a comma before that, unless, of course, the company prefers it, and we would know that by how it is written on their letterhead or on their website. When we're using ETC for etc., notice that we have a comma before and after it if it's in the middle of a sentence. If it's at the end of the sentence, we just simply end it with the period, such as these two examples here. Please sterilize the scalpel, comma, Foley catheter, comma, etc., comma, before leaving. Please bring the necessary supplies to class, such as a pen, comma, notebook, comma, dictionary, comma, etc., period. Here's an important rule that sometimes is difficult for students to understand, but if you can get this and understand it, it'll give you some great confidence in your writing. We're going to use a comma to separate independent clauses, and we briefly talked about this in our sentence structure lecture. Use a comma to separate independent clauses when they are joined with a coordinating conjunction. And what are our conjunctions? Remember fanboys? What do fanboys stand for? Think about that, and when you think you've gotten your answers, let's go to the next slide. Fanboys stand for and, nor, but, or, yet, so. Again, memorize those. It's easy to do. If you remember those, you'll remember what all of the conjunctions are. And just for fun, if you would like, you can go out to this YouTube site here. I've got the little song from the Schoolhouse Rock, Conjunction Junction, that some of you may remember. I remember watching it as a kid on Saturday mornings, watching cartoons. And maybe I'm dating myself here, but some of you might remember that. Others of you maybe have seen this in school before. But again, it's just a nice little song and cartoon to remind you about conjunctions and how they're used. So when you recognize a conjunction is in a sentence, you need to do a test to see if it has two independent clauses on either side of this conjunction. And that's why it's so important to be able to recognize where a conjunction might lie in a sentence. So let's take a look at the first example here. The clinic is open evenings, but it is closed on weekends. Here we have two independent clauses, and we'll do the test. You see this word but. But is one of our conjunctions. Think about fanboys. The clinic is open evenings. We could put a period there. That clause is independent. It can stand alone. It could be a sentence on its own. Now we got to do the test on the other side of the conjunction but. It is closed on weekends. Does that make sense? Is it a complete sentence? It sure is. So we have another independent clause. So when we have two independent clauses on either side of a conjunction, one of our fanboys, we have to have a comma before it. Let's look at the example next here. The clinic is open evenings, but not on weekends. Well, you might say, well, but is a conjunction. I'm going to put a comma before it. Remember, we have to do the test on both sides of it. The clinic is open evenings. Yes, we can put a period there. It's its own sentence. It's independent. Let's take a look on the other side of this conjunction, though. Not on weekends. Does that make sense? No, it is not. It does not make sense. It cannot stand alone. There's not a subject there. Not on weekends is dependent. In this case, notice we do not put in a comma. So very important to realize that you don't always put a comma before the word and or but or for or so. We have to do the test. Are there two independent clauses? Is there an independent clause before that fanboy or that conjunction? Is there an independent clause after that conjunction? If it's independent on both, they could both be their own sentence. We're going to put a comma before it. But again, don't just put a comma before every and in your writing because you'll get them wrong. Moving along to our next set of rules for commas. For direct address and the words yes and no, we're going to use commas. So enclose names of persons used in a direct address. So it is my pleasure, comma, Paula, comma, to promote you to division manager. So maybe this is in a letter. The sentence might be in a letter to Paula, and it's directly addressing her. Set off her name in commas. Same thing with the words yes and no. Jill, will you please explain this new policy to me? Yes, comma, I'd be happy to. We're going to use a comma when we separate two or more independent modifiers for the same noun. So let's look at this first one here. The beautiful, comma, healthy baby was delivered by C-section. The test here is if you can put a mental and in between the two, or you can reverse the two and it still makes sense. So it was the beautiful baby and it's a healthy baby. So that makes sense. We could switch it around. The healthy, beautiful baby was delivered. Still makes sense. So with those two tests, we know that it's called an independent modifier. We're going to put a comma between them. Let's look at the next one here. The patient is a well-developed, comma, well-nourished Caucasian female. A lot going on in this sentence here. She is a well-developed female and a well-nourished female, and we can switch them around. Well-nourished Caucasian female and well-developed Caucasian female. So those are independent modifiers. We will put a comma between those. Note, however, that we do not place a comma before Caucasian. Okay, it's you can read more about this in your book of style for an explanation on pages 110 and 111. Talks about this. Our book of style does consider this gender as the age, race, and gender as a single unit with the noun. So, and we would not switch it around. We would not say it's a Caucasian well-developed female. That doesn't make sense. So this can cause trouble for some students. Just realize that in a sentence where you see well-developed, well-nourished, and then a race, no comma before the race in this situation. And this type of sentence is dictated a lot, all the time. We always hear well-developed, well-nourished. So if you just learn a little rule there, that's great. Notice also that our races are capitalized, capital C for Caucasian, and we'll talk about that in a couple of weeks when we get into our capitalization unit. Let's look at our last sentence here. The 34-year-old Asian male is alert and oriented times 3. This one, no comma at all. Okay, again, we leave the age, race, and gender. It's all considered a single unit with the noun, so no commas at all. You might be wondering, what's this times 3? It's just looking at the patient's mental status. Does the patient know who they are, where they are, and what time it is? That's considered to be oriented to person, place, and time. So times 3, that's what that means. Again, used very often in dictation. The last of our comma rules here include that we will put a comma after a closing in a letter situation. So in your business letter writing, such as sincerely yours, comma. When we have digits of 5 or more, we will use a comma. 4 or less, we will not. So this is where things might be a little bit different than our English writing. When we're talking about technical medical writing, 5 digits or more require the comma. 4 or less do not. So WBC 15,000, 15, comma 000. And notice the next one down here, 1,000 milliliters, not 1 comma 000, 1,000. So again, no comma with the 4 digits. The next two show us that we need to be careful about information that needs to be kept together and read as a single unit. So, such as the infant weighed 4 pounds, 15 ounces. We would not want to put a comma to separate pounds and ounces here because it needs to be read as a single unit. Same thing with the flight took 2 hours, 10 minutes. One unit needs to be read together, no comma between hours and the 10 minutes. The remainder of our lecture PowerPoint today, we'll talk a little bit about reference books. So this is the final one on our commas, and I just wanted to really reiterate the importance of going through your book, the Medical Transcription Techniques and Procedures textbook, reading the rules, doing the self-studies as you go. Really try to understand these rules. Practice, practice, practice is not something that you're going to just get by osmosis by listening to this or just blankly reading. You really need to get yourself into it and practice the rules in order to understand them. I've mentioned a couple times our AHDI Book of Style here throughout this PowerPoint. In our first one, you'll hear me talk about the Book of Style, and you will use your Book of Style throughout your medical transcription classes, and if you're in the transcription program, you will use it in the virtual practicum course that's at the end of the program. It really is our golden standard or our Bible for reference information for medical writing, and realize again that medical rules may be a little bit different than English rules, so it's going to depend on what kind of writing you're doing. The best way to find information in the Book of Style is to look up the topic in the index in the back of the book, and it will tell you where to go and find it inside the book. Get used to using that book, because once you really understand where to find things, it does have a lot of good information. For instance, if you look up commas in the index, there's a whole chapter on commas and punctuation. And you know, sometimes it's easier to understand rules if you read it in different contexts. So if you really don't understand what our book is saying, look it up in the Book of Style and read it there, because you might understand how they word it more than that. Same thing with the rules that I've gone over here. Maybe you didn't understand something that I said. Look it up in the Book of Style and read it there, and it might help to clarify. I mentioned also that we'll talk about different reference books within this class. If you're in the medical transcription class right now, the Dorland's Medical Dictionary was a required book for that class. And just to express the idea of going through that book, don't just shove it in your book bag. Take it out and take a look at it. Look at the table of contents and look at the different things there. There's all sorts of tables and illustrations on arteries and nerves and bones, muscles. All of those things are great references. So get to know your books and know what's inside of them so that they're of use to you in your classes instead of just paying all this money for books that you never look at. Get them out. Get used to them. Flag them if you need. Highlight if you need. They're your books. Make them your own reference. Again, if you're in the medical transcription class, you've been asked to purchase a word book, either the medical word book or the Sloan's word book. Word books are divided into different parts, and this information here talks about it. It's a little bit different than a dictionary. What's the difference between a dictionary and a word book? Dictionaries have definitions. Word books only have the spelling of words. So sometimes they're a little more efficient at looking up. If you know what it means, you don't actually need to know what it means, but you need to know how to spell a word. A word book can become very handy. Also, the word book is divided into the subspecialties. So for instance, if you're transcribing orthopedics, you can go right to the orthopedics division of that word book, and it will already make your search a little bit more defined. And this slide just further explains what's in the word book, different specialties, different sub-entries. So if you look up muscle, you'll see all the different muscles located underneath it, which can be very useful if you're not sure exactly what the pronunciation of a specific muscle is. Also, there are abbreviations, lots of anatomy plates which show, again, what a specific structure looks like. Can really be useful in your terminology classes as well as your transcription classes. We also have rules on how do you form plural words, all of that. Well, you can read on these slides a little bit more information about the word book. One nice feature that they have are some of the word books have phonetic spelling. So tergium is one word that sounds like it starts with a T, and if you look it up, it would tell you to see tergium, P-T-E-R-Y-G-I-U-M. So that's kind of nice, like pneumonia. If you didn't know that it started with a P, you would think it starts with an N. If you look that up, it would tell you to look at PN. Same thing with psoriasis. Sounds like it starts with an S, starts with a P, and the book would tell you, would show you the phonetic spelling and where to look for the correct spelling. And just for your own information, a tergium is a wrinkle-like structure, especially an abnormal triangular fold or membrane in the intrapalpebral fissure, extending from the conjunctiva to the cornea. So it's in the eye. So something to start now in your studies is professional development. If you hear something in the news, take note of that, especially anything in the healthcare area. Watch and listen for new words, new procedures. There's lots of research going on here, especially in the Madison area. If you're in the Madison area or wherever you're at, I'm sure there's research going on, and make note of it. It's all professional development. Make sure to read again the beginning of Chapter 3 through all the commas, do all the self-studies. The most successful students in this class independently complete and check all of their self-study activities. So make that your goal. You will have a chance to begin creating your own reference binder in this class called an information station. And this, I have a link out in our assignments link this week in Blackboard. They have more details on how to begin this binder. And you're going to just continuously add to this binder throughout your studies here at Madison College. So keep that in mind as you gather your information and start this binder. You're going to continue to add to it. It's your reference binder to take on the job once you're done with our courses here at Madison College. Thanks so much for listening to our lecture, and we will see you next week. Have a great week.